All right. Hey, you've asked for it and you've got it. We are digging into some advanced SEO schema deployment via GTM. Yes, sexy stuff today on The Edge.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Hear and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
This is Edge of the Web Radio, episode 357. And I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Every week we bring you some amazing guests from around the world talking about digital marketing and digital marketing news of the week. So we unpack everything, we unpack a key marketing aspect and really go take it deep and be able to unpack it for our listening audience. So whether you're part of an agency or a freelancer or you're part of a organization, part of the marketing department, this show is for you because we're rolling out some great concepts in digital marketing strategy and execution each and every week here on Edge. So if you want to have a look at the show and what we do, go over to edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. If you're new to the show, here are the ropes. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. If you're joining us via live, hey, join in, and we certainly enjoy interacting with you on our live broadcast on YouTube. 3 p.m. Eastern every Monday. And if you're coming across us on our audio side of things, we are on all of the podcasts. So I don't know one place that we're not from a podcast aggregator scenario. Jacob, do you know where we're not right now?
Are we on Plex officially? Because I had to add it through the iTunes thing.
I don't think we are.
Well, there you go.
Why am I hearing about this right now on the air?
I'll add it to my list.
And every time we do the show, we build the list, don't we?
We do. We keep thinking of other things that we can add, and if you have a podcast aggregator that we want to put it in there, let us know.
Absolutely. So we're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Player FM, Spotify, TuneIn, and we're doing 2 podcasts a week. So always remember, as we're having our interview, and we have some fantastic guests on the show, we also split off the news section in a separate podcast, a bit more snackable for you, so you can actually take it in on the drive into work. Oh, wait, we're still shut down, aren't we? Well, as you walk from one room to another room, you listen to the podcast, the news podcast. I'm so happy that we're starting to actually get out of our shell now and starting to get back into a level of normalcy. Hopefully everybody's safe, everybody's healthy, and the best thing in the world is to make sure that they try to avoid risk at all times. So as we start making our way back to our jobs, make sure that you're staying clean, and it's not the new normal. Well, this is the new normal, actually, is that I've never washed my hands as many times as I had over the last 2 months. And that's a scary thing because I'm 50 years old, dude.
Yeah. And I'm telling my kids to wash their hands constantly, more than ever before.
Absolutely. You know, just kind of like a drive-by cleaning, right? Hey, where you been?
Right.
All right. So check out all of the Edge of the News content over at edgeofthewebradio.com. So you can actually, not Edge of the News, Edge of the Web. And you can see our transcripts, our articles, our news sections, and all that, as well as all the video pieces that we're putting out there. And let us know how we're doing, because we certainly would love to hear from our listeners. We have a really good listener base. 23% of our audience is in the UK and Ireland, actually. So that's a fantastic grouping of listeners, and you're going to love today's show. I guarantee it. The show is brought to you by our title sponsor, Strategics, who is our parent company as well. We're the pioneers in agile digital marketing, and what we focus on are technical SEO, social media management and marketing, search engine management and marketing, and focused on omni-channel broadcasts, very similar to what we're doing right here in the studio. We built the studio to be able to capture client content so we can repurpose it for audio, video, transcripts, blog content, and much more. So if you're interested in what that could mean for you and how easily you can actually fill up the omni-channel digital lanes to meet the new media audience, boy, that's a buzzword sentence right there, isn't it? I think I won.
Hurt my brain.
Give us a call over 877 SEO for Web or 877-736-4932. And we'd love to talk to you, give you a free hour of sit-down consultation, kind of unpack some of the stuff that we do for our clients. And some nice wins would come out of that conversation anyway. So give us a shout. We'd love to talk to you. All right, you've heard from him. He's jammered on in the production booth. That is Jacob Mann, the studio creative director. Thanks for joining me on this escapade today, sir.
Yeah, good to be here as always. Like you said, it's nice to have some things kind of come back to normal. And
Yeah.
getting in the studio every week for us has been a good way to get away. And I've got the glass. If I can find it, it's further away than I thought. But
You are self-contained.
I'm
there.
safe.
Yeah.
Or you're safe. I'm not sure. Depends on who you ask. Who's the safe person?
Just make sure that you clean up before you leave. Because I'm in the studio, I can't leave before you leave, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'll have to sneak out for. I guess if I just stay here, you're stuck. Maybe we can make this a marathon.
We could do that.
Pick a charity, and I'll say Aaron has to stay in here for 24 hours.
Wow.
Because I refuse to leave.
Well, if you ask my kids, they would actually tell you that I could do that standing on my hand. So.
Oh, I'm in. We got to see this.
24 hours. Digital marketing. Let's go. Let me count the ways of schema. We got 400 plus different schema types. That could be 24 hours right there. All righty, let's tell you who's going to be coming up on the show. Maybe we might actually have Annie Cushing coming on next week. Jessica Bowman's coming up on the 15th. Marco Bonomo's on the 22nd, and Michael King is coming up on 6/29 of this month. And hey, if you're interested in having us talk to a thought leader in the digital marketing space, just let us know over at info@edgeofthewebradio.com. Be happy to sit down and talk to you and find out if we can open the door for you. If you're interested in being part of the show, let us know, and we'll see how we can make it fit for you as well. So info@edgeofthewebradio.com. Set the reminders on the YouTube channel to get notified when we are live with those shows. All right, so that's the show housekeeping. Be sure to check out the news podcast. We unpacked a lot of key news items, especially some Google updates regarding user experience. So you got to check that one out. But that's it for the wrap up here. Let's go to our featured guest this week.
Now it's time for Edge of the Web featured interview with Paul Lovell, founder and SEO consultant at Always Evolving SEO.
All right, Paul. There's a deep voice introduction. How's it sit with you?
That sounds great.
Hey, Paul, thanks for joining us across the pond here, a little bit on the outskirts of London, and we really appreciate you joining us today and spending some of your family evening time with us. Appreciate it, sir.
That's my pleasure completely. I love talking about search.
Well, you don't know if it's going to be a pleasure yet because we haven't done it yet. So, I mean, I'm crossing my fingers here. But so Paul, he's an international consultant based in the UK, helping clients all over the world. He's a founder of Always Evolving SEO, which is an aptly named company because it is always evolving. And you specialize in technical SEO consultancy. You're also a writer for Search Engine Watch and a contributor to many blogs and webinars. Where have you been recently? Well, not been recently because we're all kind of shut down recently. But some of the more recent contributions, just give us a bit of a litany over the last 6 to 10 months.
Yes, I had the pleasure of speaking at SMX London and, the virtual event, and as well as Brighton SEO's virtual event in conjunction with SEMrush. Mm-hmm. And I've done some e-commerce surgeries with SEMrush, and there's another one coming up on the 11th. And I'm doing some more talking with them with Schema on the 16th, I believe it is.
Awesome. So we're going to get you prepped for that one, all right?
Yep, you're warming me up.
So we certainly appreciate you constantly contributing into the education in digital marketing because there's so much that needs to be unpacked regularly. And schema is one of those concepts that have been around for years, but continually we're coming across clients that haven't deployed that, didn't know how to deploy, didn't know what it was, right? And what incredible opportunities there are to be able to deploy that on sites. But first and foremost, how did you get to be where you are in your industry and being the founder of your company?
Yeah, so I started off in the digital ecosystem many years ago. designing websites. Then I got annoyed with SEOs keep telling me what changes they wanted doing to the design and the layout and the meta information within a web page. Started learning it myself over the years, listening to guys like David Harry and those guys over at the SEO Dojo many years ago. And yeah, it's just slowly made that progression into getting more and more specialized at it myself. Eventually specialized in AdWords as well. Won a few awards with them, a few partner awards. And then I did have another agency called Husky SEO. One of my clients, I built up to a certain size, and then they went and got funded as a startup. They raised 4.4 million in funding. I went and worked for them for 18 months. And then I've come back to working from home again and being able to spend more time with the family.
Very cool. Now, what do your kids think about the sign behind you?
Yeah, they only see it when they come in the office.
For those of you on the audio side, he's got a "Warning Genius at Work" sign right behind him. Where can we get one of those things? And why don't our wives give those to us? Come on, it's not going to happen, is it?
It was the wife that actually bought it for me.
Oh, see, now I'm just jealous. All right. And Paul and I did actually call ahead because we're both wearing our white and black T-shirts. So I don't know what's going on with you, Jacob. I mean, didn't you get the memo? Anyway, all right. So
it's gray.
It's a shade of black. Okay, all right. So you have talked a good deal regarding structured data, Paul, and I would love to bring this to our audience. I don't think we've actually had a deep structured data show in the years that we've been doing this, and that's a failure on my part. I'm very sorry to our listener base. So first and foremost, we just wanted to understand your background from a technical SEO standpoint. You've been doing this for a long time. You certainly have had a lot of technical SEO travels. What other things besides structured data have you deployed that are some great deep plays in technical SEO?
Yeah, so I mean, generally speaking, what I find myself doing is going down rabbit holes. So a little while ago, I went down one rabbit hole, which was about server logs, and went very, very technical on those, helped out sites with over 150 million pages, really analyze what page is being crawled and why may not be being crawled, and starting to look at algorithms like Dust, which is a different URL, similar text, and starting to understand how Google might be using that on larger sites specifically to help reduce their crawl budget. Well, to save Google money, obviously, by not crawling pages that look like they're very similar to others that they may have already crawled. And yeah, so that was one rabbit hole I went down. And then obviously then started playing around with Google Tag Manager and went very technical on that. And I think one of the other unmissed sort of like things that you can do with Tag Manager is I do a lot of stuff with e-commerce. So if you've got an e-commerce search page, for example, where you may be selling like trainers, for example, and obviously there's new lines and new designs coming out all of the time. Now, what you can do via Tag Manager is you can actually fire an event and a no index tag if there's a search query that's been taking place internally that then returns 0 results, as in you haven't got any of those trainers, for example.
Right.
So once that happens, you place a no index. Google knows that you don't want to index that page. That's fine. That's for SEO purposes. That's fine. What you can do off the back of it is actually fire an event off of that same issue of 0 products and actually track that search query and pass that through as an event, and then send yourself a Google Analytics alert email every day to let you know that there's been searches carried out where you've got no results. And it may be a case that you were waiting to stock a new pair of trainers, but you were just waiting to see if there was enough demand. You can already see that there's sort of like loyal, maybe return users that are coming to your site, looking for those trainers in specific, and you haven't got them in your competitors.
Absolutely.
So essentially, you're just giving money to the competitor.
Absolutely, and what a great reconnaissance, you're crowdsourcing, but you could also throw around a remarketing tag against those individuals.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And then pursue them whenever you have that in stock. Oh my gosh! I mean, for the ones everybody who's playing at home, that is some sexy stuff right there. I mean, come on. And that's the kind of thing that we want to talk about today, Paul, is how to unpack this. I mean, there's certainly some huge changes that are going on, and what what the engines are actually paying attention to, and we just covered it on the news. The user experience performance reviews, the CLS that Google's actually paying attention to inside Google Search Console, and the algorithm change that's going to be happening in 2021. But let's dig into structured data. And what I want to do here is kind of go a 101 step and pace, real quick, to be able to guide some of the listeners. Some of our listeners aren't SEOs; they're either social media managers or they're SEMs, or maybe they're owners of businesses that are listening, and we want to be able to break down some of these key concepts before we go into fully down the rabbit hole. And I'll go with you. But our audience is always looking for some good advanced SEO education as well. So first and foremost, the basics. What is structured data? And again, maybe part of our audience hasn't dived into that. So let's kind of lay it out there. What is it that we're going to be talking about here today?
Yeah. So the easiest way to sort of understand structured data is that essentially what you're trying to do is give the search engines, not just Google, because
right.
Bing and the other search engines listen to it as well, but you're giving Google, or the search engine, should I say, not just Google, the information of your web page or your document in a machine readable format. So it's a way that you can call out very specific items on the page where the search engines haven't got to guess what it is. For example, if you're placing product-based schema, you're specifically calling out the price and the currency. The search engines aren't having to guess no more. They know exactly what it is, even though they're generally going to have a good idea.
Right.
They're quite advanced, but because you're pulling it out in a machine readable format, they're able to digest it much better, which is why they prefer JSON LD as well. It's because it's easy for them to consume.
Exactly. So this for an equivalency to what Meta used to be. Meta was nothing like this whatsoever. It was a few fields on a page. Yes, that would be structured, and it was a structured area in which you could have content, but it didn't have nearly the amount of itemization that's provided to us by Schema.org, which was a consortium of a number of different large search engines to be able to give us basically the way to talk to them at a code level to inform them of what that page was about and deep additional items of description for that particular schema type, right?
That's correct, yeah.
All right, so this is how we talk to engines. And is it a fixed amount of data, a fixed amount of different types, or is it ever growing?
Oh, no. This is always changing. Since about April of last year, Schema.org, which is like the repository of where all of this information is,
right?
They've pretty much updated pretty much every month since April last year. And John Mueller turned around earlier on in the year, I think it was January, from memory, right. And he said that he sees structured data getting more complicated and much more in depth, and there's more types coming. So when you look at what Schema.org's been doing and the fact that John Mueller's saying stuff, you can see that there's certain things that they're trying to understand a lot better.
One could say it's always evolving SEO, right?
Exactly.
I had to do it now as opposed to later. All right, so you're absolutely right. Schema.org is the taxonomy of code formats. And so there's a lot of different examples, especially even open graph formats for Facebook and Twitter and the like, because that was some early adoption of schema to be able to pass through a particular customized Facebook image and a customized Twitter image, as well as descriptions. That's part and parcel of what we're talking about here. So JSON LD. Let's talk about JSON LD. It's a type of markup for delivering Schema.org. Unpack that for us. What is it? There's a number of different ways to be able to deliver schema, but JSON is a valuable piece because of why.
It's just JavaScript. Personally, I don't know why they specifically like it, but I think it's just the way that it's formatted out. Whereas you get a lot of, say, for example, WordPress themes, where they automatically include it in the item prop, which is where they've got to read through the page. With JSON LD, it's condensed into one section of code, so they consume it all in one go.
Got it.
They've not got to find little snippets of it and join it together throughout the page. Got it.
Now, the benefits of structured data. Lay it on me. What have you seen as you've rolled Schema onto a website? Now, you deal with a lot of big websites too.
Yeah.
But what kind of benefits have you seen from implementing a strategic set of schema deployments there?
Yeah. So when you look at the first step will be to go to the Google Developers Portal and have a look at where you're going to get those enhanced features like your FAQ, your how-to, your product and review schema, your video schema as well, where you can pull out those to grab those extra, what I call enhanced cert features. They're going to be the ones that you're going to notice the most, because generally speaking, some of them, if not most of them, will help increase your click-through rate. Now, I mean, for example, I've seen projects I've worked on, which are e-commerce sites where we've deployed review stars and actually coded out correctly on the site, so that we're giving it to Google in the correct format, so that it enables to show the stars if the site's eligible. And we've seen, I mean, like double-digit increase in CTR just by doing something as simple as that. And the thing is that information's already on the page. It's literally just not being sort of called out in the correct way to the search engines.
So part of it, a good deal of it, is how it's actually deployed, and you do have some tools that do partial deployment or scattered deployment of schema on the page. And that's what you're talking about, is that you can see it in multiple pages, and it is a little bit heavier weight to carry to be able to join all that together upon rendering. But it's click-through is the obvious play there, but there's so many additional benefits to that. You have the ability to be represented by Google in the knowledge panel inside of rich snippets with this type of schema deployment, right?
That's exactly right, and it goes much deeper than that. For example, I've worked with a medical client, and obviously medical web page and medical codes, you don't get any enhanced feature with that. But what you're essentially doing is you're giving the information. For example, this specific company, we had medical web page because they're in the medical industry, and we went through and actually specifically called out the medical codes for each individual page, and they did see an increase within their organic impressions and clicks, etc., and they started showing for different queries which they weren't showing for before, because we were able to supply very specific information about what the web page was about, rather than just going after what Google tells you would give you the enhanced feature.
Right.
So there's many layers to it. Think of it like an onion.
Or an ogre, right? See?
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been watching way too many kids shows during shelter in place. But there's a lot more to it. Even further down the rabbit hole, I mean, there's a lot of schema types, like event schema types and job application schema types. You can build a knowledge graph, and video is certainly very important there. But there's something a little bit far deeper, a little more abstract. As we've been having shows about how Google's searching for entities and entity relationships, and we've had Bill Slawski on the show a couple times, and he just deep dives into Google patents all the time, and he goes where no man or woman wants to go to be able to map all this out. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that Google's trying to figure out what you're talking about, one, and also trying to figure out the relevancy of everything that you have on your site, as well as how much subject matter knowledge you have and you're showcasing, to be able to build a better picture of understanding topics, right?
That's correct, yeah. And Bill does a great job of talking about the patents, and he's brought up many times the patents where they actually talk about structured data and schema within those patents as well, to help solidify obviously the entity information. And when you start getting much deeper into structured data, and you start looking at like what John Alderson's done over at Yoast with the graph format, and then you sort of like plugged it into a new tool that I've just recently found, which is called Classy Schema, which actually visualizes it for you, you can start to understand how you're joining that information together, how you're joining those different parts together. Like this article is part of a web page that was published by this organization that was wrote by this author who was spoke at this event, who was a performer at this webinar. I mean, you can really start bringing some real sort of like depth to just what would standardly be just a web page.
So you're actually saying that there's a visual representation that you can also see as well.
Yeah, if you go over to Classy Schema,
oh my gosh,
you can literally put a URL in there.
Yeah,
and it will give you a proper visualization of how those dots are actually joining together, like you're saying about how you're joining the entity dots together.
Oh my gosh, I'm just gonna have to do that right now. my geek just got tweaked there, man.
Just put pause on the show.
Everybody, hold on. We'll be right back. And again, for our live audience, if anybody actually wants to ask a question of Paul, let us know, because we certainly want to also throw these links in here. But if you have any specific questions, please jump on in. So building a knowledge graph is absolutely one thing, but be able to see the visual representation. Now, there's another tool set out there called inlinks.net, which does a good deal of link association and it's entity plus semantic SEO, being able to actually associate content based on digesting and reading the entire site. Is it something like that? The visual graph that they've got there of entities that you've got, is it something to that degree where you can actually see the patterning of concepts of your website?
Yeah, it's not Inlinks is great. Obviously, Dixon Jones has been working on that. And
yeah.
I love the schema that it outputs for you, where it gives you like the about information and the mentions information of a web page, which is really sort of like, and I know that they just released some information on a recent blog post of theirs where they've been letting people take the code of their site, and they've been tracking like multiple different niches and stuff like that over a period of time to see if just by placing that slightly more depth of information via structured data into a website, if it's making a change. And to be fair, the information's there on their most recent blog. I mean, across a 4-week period, pretty much most sites have seen an increase in rank position based on the fact that they've installed that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you have link association plus schema deployment that you can customize. And this is obviously not a commercial for Inlinks, but we're a practitioner of Inlinks as well. And we've seen some nice jumps in the marks of like 25% organic with just that factor deployed in there. So can't make any promises to anybody else getting that kind of data, but we have seen some really great results, and that gets into some deployment tools. Before anything else, I want to make sure to everybody who's watching, be sure to get a reminder from YouTube. Go over to youtube.com/edge of the web and hit the bell so you can get reminded when we actually go live on 3 p.m. on Mondays. All right, so that said, got a question from the audience. SEO for Sales on our livecast asks, what are the best structured data news sources, structured data for news sources, podcasts, and blogs?
Yeah, so I actually deployed Schema for a news organization based in the New York area. They have got a specific, not just organization type, it's a news organization type. Right. And then when you break that down, you've actually got a news article type as well, which you can you have to sort of like go to the Google Developers Guidelines, have a look. They've got specific information there that you need to, that are required to get that enhanced feature by Google. But then go over to schema.org. There's many, many more types of information that you can be passing within that.
Very good.
And yeah, podcast has got its own one, which is a lot easier to deploy than most types, because you create an RSS feed of your podcast information and you put one line of code on your homepage or on the blog post category page, I think it might be.
Got it.
But that's a much easier one to deploy.
As opposed to a per article basis. And that's
that's
a whole nother hill of beans right there, because as much as you're categorizing and tagging, you're also having a whole new slew of items and item variable data that you need to also have at your disposal. So let's get into the meat of the matter here. We say the case of what it is and how valuable it is. Now let's talk about how to manage this, because even smaller sites, you still have to manage an inventory your site content and how you actually go about writing your schema, let alone deploying it. We'll get to deploying it here in a second here. But what are some of your recommendations on how to make sense out of it? Because there's so many schema types and so many additional items inside those, in the subset of those schema types. How do you go about managing it all?
Yeah, so what you got to look at is the fact of what topic that it is that you're trying to sort of like rank for, what queries, and then sort of like build your structured data types around that. Now, yeah, there's lots and lots over on schema.org, but essentially, if you're wanting to gain a certain SERP feature, then you need to go over to Google and you need to look at what it is that they're requiring. And fill out as much as that as possible, making sure that you're hitting the required ones first. Because if you don't hit them, you're going to get an error, and then they're not going to listen to your schema anyway.
Okay.
But then there is some recommended elements underneath as well. But essentially, if that's not given enough depth to what it is that you're trying to do, then go over to schema.org, and I'm sure there's probably 3, sometimes 4 times the amount within that sort of subcategory.
Now, this is not the Google structured testing tool. This is another tool. Can you give that link to us again?
Oh, sorry. So you're talking about where you can sort of visualize it. That's Classy Schema. That's the visualization.
Yeah, that's visualization. I'm talking about to be able to see the requirements of what Google's looking for.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's the Google developers section of that. So if you just type in sort of schema Google developers, you'll get a whole list of the different types, the how-tos, the article schema, local business, product, review, and it goes on. There's quite a few types there that are given enhanced features for. Because
you could certainly get lost in schema.org. There's just so much, and that is that's the tome of everything. That's the lookup. That's the wiki for each and every schema type. But for recommendations on what Google's looking for from a particular type of content, again, like podcasts, go over to the developers tools and be able to see that from Google. All right, so you've got that. You've got a knowledge of what you're supposed to write. Now, how do you go about inventorying all your pages to be able to start building your JSON scripts here? Because I'm seeing a big jump here from knowing what to write to actually mapping everything. Obviously, if you're rolling with a CMS system, WordPress, for example, it's a heck of a lot easier to be able to start getting dynamic written schema in place. But how do you go about? I mean, should every page have a schema type? Let me ask you that first.
Pretty much, there is a schema type for every type. Yeah, you've got like an about us, you've got a contact, you've got a collection page, which would be like your category, for example, and then you've got like web page, article, blog post. So yeah, pretty much there is a schema type for every page. Maybe not privacy policy and terms and conditions, but pretty much every other page it's of value. Yeah.
Got it. So what do you use to actually inventory and start tagging the different sections? I'm assuming that it's almost like you're going through a topography map of all of your content, right?
Yeah, you need to look at each individual website in its own merit and start to understand what those specific pages are actually talking about, and what sort of type of structured data is, for one, going to give you an enhanced feature, and for two, if you can't gain an enhanced feature, how can you send more information to the search engines so they can understand that page or document much better?
Do you recommend any tools from a schema audit standpoint?
Schema audits, I don't think there's actually a tool out there that will actually sort of tell you what type of schema you should have on a page. There's lots of tools that tell you haven't got schema.
Sure.
But there's no surefire tool that I've come across where they would say, oh, you should have product schema on this page, or you should have article schema on this page, because it's going to be hard for them to determine the difference between an article, a news article, and a blog post.
Yeah.
So
It's,
I mean, I've not come across anything like that. But generally speaking, when I'm keeping tabs on projects that I've carried out, that's just done by SEMrush for one of their audits, and then they've got a special section just for markup structured data.
Yep, absolutely. It'll test broken schema and the like, so it gives you some feedback there. But what a nice little possible tool build out for somebody who's entrepreneurial is, hey, guys, you know, the ecosystem's out here. Can somebody build us a schema audit tool, please? We'd appreciate that.
It's a chicken and egg issue where you need schema to tell you what's on the page so you can determine if that schema is on the page.
I know. Exactly. So deciding how to deploy it, and deciding about what you want to rank for, the goals that you have for the site topography, and pillar pages, top entry pages that you're wanting to be able to raise up. It's not just to deploy basic schema, it's to actually understand the enhanced features that you can really leverage to be able to give these pages some juice. Have you ever seen a negative result rolling schema out?
I think I wouldn't say I've seen a negative result. I've seen people get results that they weren't expecting, I think is the way to word it.
Got it.
Which is, and it all come out when Google brought out the FAQ schema, that enhanced feature. And there was a lot of people saying that they've installed it, they've seen a massive increase in impressions, which is great. But obviously, it was for the wrong type of topic, and it was taking them off of subject of what that page was actually about. So they were actually sort of like shifting their rankings or diluting their rankings, whatever you want to call it.
Got it.
But instead of them ranking strongly for one specific topic or query, they were then shown for a lot more. So it's not a case that it sort of like was a negative impact. You could argue it was positive because obviously you were given a lot more information, but I always try and use the example of red widgets and blue widgets. I know Google uses that a lot, but if you've got a page that mentions both of them, but you only want it to mention for red widgets, then make sure that your structured data follows that sort of path as well. And try not to mention the blue widgets because it is powerful. It can shift the relevance slightly. So
absolutely,
be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely, and especially with some of the automatic schema creation tools that are out there. Some of those, and there's not that many, but some of those can actually spin up what it thinks you're writing about, and it can park you into a whole other space. You're absolutely correct. So as much as I'm certain that we're going to be seeing more and more tool sets to be able to generate schema and even enhanced features of schema types, you have to manage that, and you have to get down to some very fine points of granularity, especially in those niche markets that could be assumed to be something that it's not, right?
Exactly, yeah. And at the recent information retrieval conference in Europe, which was online again, like a lot of them have been this year, there was a guy from Google, I forget his name, and he was talking about part of the algorithm that, well, whether it's released or not, I'm not too sure, but it goes into understanding that two words can sometimes mean separate things,
right? Like
rainbows and rainbows. I can't remember the exact example that they give, but there was two different versions. One was the scientific, more technical sort of like understanding of that specific term, and the other one was a much different sort of like reasoning.
Gotcha.
But I can't think of any examples off the top of my head right now.
Vacuum and vacuum cleaners have a whole different space. And if you're not paying attention, if you're actually trying to pull something in that's a vacuum reference, you could very well pull in a wiki reference to vacuum cleaner as opposed to vacuum. That'll take you down a whole other path now. Not that we have practical logic.
That's exactly what the guy was talking about, the Google engineer.
Yeah, yep.
And that they're working on that sort of functionality that can be deployed via the algorithm.
There's a lot of mapping. There's a lot of granularity here. And on top of it, we're still building this referential library. So everything's evolving right there. And that's what John Mueller was saying, is that pay attention because things are moving. And so we're building the kind of the bridge of this machine language realm to be able to not only talk to the bots, but also give context and relevancy with these entities. So we're building Skynet. We all know we're building Skynet.
Yeah, Skynet.
It's going to come after us. As soon as that last schema type goes into place, it's like a Jenga moment. Then the lasers start shooting. All right. So that's what you write. You use it with JSON, and there's some great examples online of JSON delivery and the different schema types and the item types inside of that. So look that up, audience. You can easily see that. But there's a couple different ways to deploy this. You can deploy it inline manually, right?
That's correct, yeah. And Google mentions that within the documentation they released this year, that you can literally just go to a generator. You could make it very simple, generate a schema, and you could just copy and paste it in there. But then, again, you've got to do that for every single page.
Exactly.
which is not ideal.
It is not
for most
ideal.
websites. For maybe smaller websites, you could probably get away with it, but
Right.
and even then, there's if you change a page, for example, on a blog post, you update a page, then you're not passing the sort of like updated date through.
Right.
So I mean, like most sites now are all in WordPress. Most sites that are being released now, and there is some code snippets. Like I've got a code snippet that will push the publish date and the last modified date into the head, so that then that way I can extract that using a custom variable into Tag Manager, so that you're able to make sure that part of it is kept up to date.
Right. So it's not enough. Yeah, that's pretty cumbersome, and it's not efficient at all, as content changes all the time. But you can do it. You can actually paste it right into the content or in the content area and be able to have that schema deployed. However, we've got much better ideas here. Now, there are some other delivery tools inline. I should say inline delivery tools to be able to automate this process, but we're not going to focus on those. We're going to focus on Google Tag Manager, because I know that's what you wanted to talk about. So let's talk about that for a second here. This is the good stuff. How do we deploy schema and dynamic schema? There's a fork in the road right there. But how do we deploy schema over Google Tag Manager first?
Yeah. So the way that you've got to look at it is you've got to look at it as a few different steps. The first step is you've got to get the information that you're wanting to pass in the schema into Tag Manager first. So, for example, if you've got like, I use product schema because I just spoke about it recently. Sure. So, for example, the name of the product, right? Now, in the SEO realms, that's probably your H1 term. So you can actually pull the H1 for a CSS selector straight from the page into Tag Manager. So then that way you've already got the title. I also like to use, because a lot of sites, they will automatically construct together Open Graph, for example. So you could pull the image from the meta, so in the head, you can pull that information through there from the image, or you could pull the main image from the page into another variable. So you code it up specifically. It might be like .image, for example, as the CSS class. And then we pull through the actual image URL into it. And then you've got price or review. They're the three minimums that you have to have for product. So, for example, if you're pulling the price in, what happens there is it gets a little bit more technical, because you've got the currency usually in front of it, like the $ or the pound sign. You then need to sort of split that out, so that then that way you've just got the amount. And then you can use, if you're an international site, for example, you could use a lookup table to then specify if the subcategory was /US, then it's USD. If it's /GB, then it's GBP, for example. So then that way it automatically starts to pull that information together on a page-by-page basis. And then you can go through multiple pages, and you can check using the preview tab at the bottom, and it will start to show you those variables changing for each individual page. So that way you're starting to get into that dynamic sort of realm of Google Tag Manager.
Now, let me ask you this before. Let me back up a step away from Google Tag Manager. There's some products and software for the CMSs that actually will auto generate schema types. For example, product types. I think WooCommerce has some sort of schema generator for that. Now, would you recommend taking that road of kind of native schema generation? Yoast also has another schema tool for local.
Yoast is great.
But it's also in line. It's not inserting at the header with GTM. Would you actually recommend turning off those and moving them all into the kind of the full collected delivery inside of GTM?
The way that I look at it is, if you're using Yoast and WooCommerce, they work both together. So Yoast has got a section which is for product, like to add the product schema onto it. So that's fine. But what you need to remember is they will only give you the sort of generic elements that are available on every page. So they're not going to give you any enhanced type of product schema. For example, in schema.org, there's 48 different types of schema that are nested underneath product. So you can actually sort of like get quite technical, and you can go, right, for example, if you're selling AirPods, for example, that's an accessory to an iPhone, and you can actually call that out within structured data. You can say this product is an accessory to this other product, and then you can lay again, it nests it in there. So it says this is an accessory of, and then underneath it would say product, and it'd be a whole section of product schema again for the iPhone, pointing it to the iPhone page.
Got it.
So it really depends on the depth and the richness of structured data that you want to pass. Some of these tools are really, really good, and they're really easy to deploy for people that haven't got that technical layer to sort of like go, okay, I want to send more information.
Right.
And sometimes things don't work well together. For example, Yocto, for example, the review platform. Sometimes there's a sort of disconnect between those tools that don't sort of like put in the review information into your product schema.
Got it.
So then you're missing some enhanced features. But yeah, certainly there's lots of tools out there that will auto-generate this for you. At Scouse, when you upload another 1,000 products, it's automatically deployed for you.
Sure, but all at the basic level. I guess that's what I'm really trying to mine into.
You're going to get that core level. You're not going to get the depth or the richness that's really going to sort of give you your bang for your buck.
Well, it's kind of like it's what everybody else is doing. If they have anything that's a contemporary shopping cart, right, they're going to have this basic level of schema. What differentiates you is to be able to what I should say is how you need to differentiate yourself is, okay, if that's the common schema type and that's as far as they go, take it over here where we can customize it, move it away from that generic generator and be able to actually do a good deal more of enhanced and furthering. That's what's going to separate you cleanly from the herd, so to speak, of other product e-commerce websites. Is be able to have just that additional factor could truly make the difference of you one-upping your competition in ranking, right?
Yeah. Obviously, they say that structured data isn't a direct ranking factor, but essentially, what you got to look at is at the end of the day, it's all about the content and the information that you're sending to the search engine. So if you can enrich that content or that information that you're delivering about a certain page, like I said, the AirPods are being an accessory of an iPad, iPhones, for example, you're enriching that content. It's no different to you going back to a piece of content that you wrote 2 years ago and updating it. But you're not needing to do that because you're layering that sort of like machine readable format underneath.
Yep. So along with this inventorying and being knowledgeable about new enhancements of that particular schema type should be right in front of you, is that you need to know if you've got 48 different variations under product, you should be paying attention to if they roll something new out that can be leveraged for products by and large, but especially in a particular type of product. They're developing this latticing of information. If you're going to take the dive into enhanced schema, you've got to have your eyes on the library and being aware whenever the stuff is actually being updated. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Yeah, you know, I mean, you need to sign up to the schema Web3 portal so that you get the emails of when the updates of when the new releases are coming out. And,
right.
I mean, the new pending types and stuff like that. Because there's like, for example, there's a lot at the moment around real estate. Which then sort of like where you can say like number of bathrooms, square feet, et cetera. So there's a lot being released shortly on that. There are a lot of them are pending at the moment.
All the amenities, all the things that you display in your MLS IDX connection, you can also roll out into a schema generation plan. And boy, wouldn't that be a great additional plug-in for some entrepreneurial venture here, is just to spin out a schema IDX connection.
Yeah. I'm actually working on a project for a real estate agent that uses IDX.
Oh, wow! Didn't know. All right,
but that's But again, we're just deploying that via GTM.
Cool.
Because as those new types come through and they'll be pending 1 minute, and next minute they're going to be approved and ready to use.
Yeah,
we can just layer those types in there.
That's awesome. So let's get back to the GTM side of things, and we certainly don't want to have a static GTM. I mean, you can literally render schema and then drop it into your basic HTML tag, trigger it off of page view with a specific URL designation, and that's how you can deploy schema right there, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you can literally do it as static as that. You can say, right, this is my about page.
Yeah.
Here's the about page structured data.
Yeah.
I've wrote it all up. That's as much information as I'm going to pass. You can put that in a custom HTML tag, which is where you place it. Then in the basic format, so to say, that then you then set a trigger to your about page, and then that will fire on your about page every time it's triggered, whether it be to a search engine or a search bot, or whether it just be to a standard user. But
just that
obviously,
easy.
Yeah, it's as easy as that. But again, the basic format that Google mentions within their guidelines, that will only be testable, so to say, via some Chrome plugins, but via their rich results tool. It won't render within the structured data testing tool. There's a special function information that you need to give at the head and at the footer of that code to make it work within my favorite tool, which is a structured data testing tool.
Oh, very good, very good. So we certainly have to share a number of links on this on the show notes page for this one, because we want everyone to be able to fully understand how to find this information, but also how to deploy it relatively easy. So let's talk about the data structure, the structured data testing tool. That thing has become probably a if you're not living and breathing it, Paul, you probably soon will be. I mean, you've been in that space for the longest time, and it's gotten much better here recently. So it's not a multi-tool aspect. I mean, it literally just verifies that you've got this, but it highlights certain areas. It can give you a good deal of verification on your correct deployment. When did that tool appear on the horizon for us to be able to use? Any idea?
God, that's a long time ago. That is.
Yeah.
I've been using it for a long time. I don't know when they actually released it, but it's been around for a long time. But what you need to remember is that this tool, it gives you errors and it gives you recommended requirements. Errors and recommended implementations. Now, that's just Google's own sort of specification that it's giving you those warnings on.
Got it.
But at the end of the day, I mean, you got to understand that Google does own the majority share of where everyone's searching. So you've got to sort of like play to their tune, so to say.
Absolutely. So always verify your schema deployment, and we're talking. There is no bulk verification. Does Google provide us any other larger scale perspective of incorrectly deployed schema collectively as a page count?
Yeah, if you go over to Search Console, if you've got sort of unphrased schema,
yep,
they give you there's some features in the new Search Console where you've got reviews, product, site search, and there's probably a few others as well. I know one of them's unphrased as well, where you've got an error in your code. But they give you essentially sort of like the guide from the pages that they've crawled to where you may have some issues. And you got to remember that issue might not only be on that page, it might be on multiple other pages, but they're just the ones that they've picked up on.
Gotcha. So one, Google's telling you what you have wrong. If you do have structured data or schema deployed, it's going to tell you collectively how many pages you have that are failing in one way, shape, or form. You can swing right around to the structured data tool, testing tool, be able to review that, and it will also give you recommendations. And there's a schema generator that is from Google as well that you can actually roll through not only the basic features, but the enhanced features, take that content, and then create your variable data inside that generator, right? And then deploy that into schema. That's via GTM. Is that the entire ecosystem that we're talking about?
Google gives you some snippet codes within their documentation. They've not actually got a generator that will generate it for you.
Sure.
They sort of guide you. They say, here's, for example, with product, they goes, here's a sample product set of information with all your product information, brand, SKU, MPN. It gives you review data for a single review, and it gives you aggregate review as well. So obviously, if you haven't got all of those elements, you need to take those out, because especially with reviews, they're very strict on the fact that if you've got a review, that's great, but it also needs to be on a page and in a way that it's actually quite visible that it is a review about the product. And if you haven't got a review, don't place review schema, because it can sort of end you in sort of like I mean, it could be classed as a bit spammy because
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
actually trying to tell them something and gain a cert feature when you're not eligible.
And that's what we experienced about mid last year whenever they clamped down on review stars and third-party review schema to being able to be deployed on product service pages and the like for a number of different industries. So that came through, and we pretty much just yanked the carpet right from underneath us of not being able to utilize some really good tools, third-party tools, to be able to infuse those consumer reviews. You experienced that, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so they used to allow you to place reviews within organisation and local business, which you can still place it there. I'm not saying you can't place it there; you can still place it there, but you just won't get that enhanced feature. So you won't get those stars showing. It's only if it's within the product ecosystem, and I think books and maybe a few others as well, where you're able to gain that enhanced feature. But they still do listen to it within organisation and local business, but they just don't reward you with the enhanced cert feature.
Very good. Very good. So be careful. Always be careful when you're using schema, because empty fields are not the way to go. You want everything that you're deploying has to have a relevancy of what you're writing about on the page. Paul, could you give us that schema update link again to sign up for schema email?
Yeah, so if you go over to schema.org, you've got there's a community that you can sign up to, and you sign up to the community. I think it's over on W3,
cool.
And then you'll start getting emails from the teams at schema.org. So when there's like releases have actually happened, and when new types are sort of like going to be pending.
Very good. I am certain that we could probably have a conversation that goes a few more hours unpacking this. This is good stuff. This is fantastic stuff. And these are clear actionable items that you can deploy on your website to be able to not only get one up on your competitors, which is always the play, but also communicate to Google what your content's about, because they are rewarding you. Again, officially, there's no SEO play here, but I mean, come on. If you're actually talking to Google, you're letting Google know what your content's about, they like that. So do it, and do it carefully. Final thoughts for someone who is just about to deploy schema on their website. We've gone through a list of recommendations. I really appreciate you going through this with us. But what are some guidance points that you'd have for someone who's just about to push the big button there?
If you're about to push the big button and you're deploying it via Tag Manager dynamically, test multiple pages, test as many as you can. And once you've deployed it, use something like SEMrush or Screaming Frog or one of the other great crawlers out there to crawl your site to make sure that it's rendering and sending the type of information that you would expect on every page.
Very good. Test it again, test it and again and again, and make sure that you've got everything, especially if you're rolling a dynamic schema and using data points to be able to pull in content into this. And I still think that being able to deploy it via GTM, now, you still have to have some sort of inventory management. You have to have a spreadsheet of where all your content is and what it's going to render. But being able to deploy it via GTM, you've got it all contained in the toolbox that Google's wanting us to use to be able to deploy these type of things, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, Google's given us this ecosystem to sort of like enhance our tracking initially, but now we're starting to understand there's many other different functions that we can use it for.
Got it.
For deploying certain elements into the head page, like no index, like I mentioned earlier,
right,
as well as being able to deploy structured data. And the good thing about it is, it doesn't matter whether your site's on Magento, WordPress, Shopify, or anything like that. GTM works with all of them. So it's not like, for example, like Cloudflare. If you've set up your Cloudflare plugin in WordPress and you've got 3 different other plugins, you haven't got to worry about certain ways you've got to have it set up.
Yeah.
To leverage it to the maximum. It's just one set of information for pretty much most websites.
And that's all I was really getting to, is that you start bumping heads into albeit good platforms on their own, but you're rolling out 3 or 4 different plugins. All of a sudden you have schema dissonance. You've got a number of other competing attributes that are trying to take away from each other, because I mean, that's the world of WordPress, unfortunately, is that
that's exactly right.
it's snap-on tools and they don't know each other. So cleaning that out, and I mean, certainly using it to get to a particular point and then maturing your schema deployment off of GTM to the dynamic side of things, but also just using it for how cleanly it actually injects itself into the head element. These are things that you want to mature your schema strategy towards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
And obviously enriching it much further than what you would do with your basic standard set of structured data.
Absolutely.
And you've just got to think of it like templates, as in your product page is one template for a website, and you will have for product you might have two schema templates, one with reviews and one without. But for example, your blog post pages, that's a different template. So you would have that for your blog posting, and you've got to think of it the same way as you would structure out the templates of your website, because pretty much all websites are just certain templates, and Google understands that in crawling. They know to not listen to the header and the footer of the page really that much, because they're just wanting the content in the middle. So you've got to look at that the same way as when you deploy structured data with GTM, is that you need to look at the page sort of templates and construct your schema around those sets of data.
And for the most part, you can be able to deploy via path structure and the like. So, I mean, if you
you can use IDs and CSS selectors, and
very good,
from pulling elements from the page into your structured data.
Very good, very good. Well, sir, we really appreciate your knowledge dump here, and we certainly want to open any questions to you up online. We certainly do want to have our listeners deep dive into this space, because these are key factors that just differentiate you from your ranking competition, and you guys have to own it. And this is your web property, and this is what Google's asking for you to do on a regular basis. So make sure you check out all the links on our show notes page. We really appreciate your time, Paul. We'd love to have you back again talking about schema as new schema evolves. So hopefully you're game for that. But one last thing, a couple last questions. What really bugs you about your industry right now?
Oh, there's a few things. I mean, it's hard because things change so quickly. As in, for what bugs me?
Not enough schema.
No, not schema. No, no, definitely not schema. Schema's fine. What bugs me? I don't know. There's not a lot that really does bug me, to be honest with you.
Good.
So yeah, there's nothing I can literally think of off the top of my head.
No worries. Well, conversely, what excites you about your industry right now? Because you've been doing SEO for a while. This moment in time is truly unique as opposed to 10 years ago. What's exciting you right now? And you can't say schema. You've already used that
yeah,
card.
That's it. Yeah, so obviously there's lots of enhancements coming. I mean, like you got HTTP2 to be picked up by Google would be great. And then there's even talk about HTTP3 coming. And I know there was a bit of a conversation about how you can use Cloudflare and actually edit Cloudflare for Shopify and those platforms as well. So I'm just like looking into those elements at the moment as well.
Cool. There's a lot of people working on this, and what a rich environment right now we've got to be able to dig around and play with all these wonderful tools. Would love to hear about your thoughts about machine learning now in the future sometime, because it all kind of fits together, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when you're at the structured data level, there's lots of bits that are part of the pie, so to say.
Absolutely. Well, can we promote anything for you today?
All I will say is this week I've got a course going live on SlideShare, which is showing you how to deploy structured data via GTM, which I've got a link that I'll be passing out once that's live, which will give you 2 weeks free access to all the courses there.
Cool. Yeah, this is going to be a great show notes. It really is. And I could not pass this up. Literally, Paul has trained with Shaolin monks. You've got 2 huskies and 8 kids.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my wife has to put up with a lot. But yeah. I trained with Shaolin monks many years ago.
That's cool.
For about 18 months.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, we've got a nice big family. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Between Jacob and I, we've got a big family, but you literally have eclipsed us. You've doubled our family. So I don't even know what that's like. I know what it's like with 4 kids.
I've got 4. If I had 8, I'd probably have to become a monk.
I'd go up on the mountain. Exactly. You beat me to it. All right.
No,
well,
they're good. The kids are great.
Absolutely. Well, we certainly want you to stay safe and healthy, and we'd love to have you back on the show in the future. So thanks so much for contributing today.
No problem. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Cool. So you want to track Paul down on his Twitter handle at _Paul Lovell with 2 L's, and his LinkedIn account, Paul-Lovell with 2 L's. Same thing. It wouldn't be different, so why I even said that, right? Make sure you check out the bonus news podcast that we did with Paul here today, covering a number of key things, including Google's ads credits that are starting to roll out. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to your interactions from Google Ads, because you may actually have some credits coming your way. If you want to know more about that, check out the podcast that's attached to this podcast. For everybody over here, thanks so much. We really appreciate you as listeners and watchers of the show. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're really feeling up to it today, please give us a review over at iTunes. We love to hear your reviews and what you think about the show. Check out all the must-see videos and insider information over at edgeofthewebradio.com. Don't forget to sign up to the newsletter. Forgot to mention that. It's right there at Edge, and you'll be getting a great deal of this same content to your inbox on a regular basis, free of charge, and we won't use it for anything else but sending you digital nuggets of gold. Don't know exactly who we have on the show next week. Possibly Andy Cushing. I'm going to tease that one out there. But for all of us over at Edge of the Web, thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay well, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.